In this section, we'll unpack what a risk-based approach really means in AML and CFT. You'll see why regulators insist on it, how it differs from tick box compliance, and how it guides smarter priorities, controls, and resource allocation across your institution. In AML and CFT, the key strategic choice is mindset. Tick box compliance treats every rule and every customer the same. It feels safe, but it's rigid and wasteful, diverting effort to low-risk activity and still missing real hotspots. A risk-based approach, by contrast, is targeted. Controls are dynamic and proportional, focused on the highest ML and TF exposures. That's how mature institutions deploy their people, data, and technology where they have the greatest impact. You can think of the risk-based approach as a three-level structure. At the top, FATF sets the global baseline. Recommendations 1 and 10 make risk assessment a legal expectation, not a nice-to-have. Countries then transpose this into local laws and regulations, guided by national and sectoral ML and TF risk assessments. Finally, at firm level, you must make it operational. Clearly document how you assess risk, when you tighten or relax controls, and be ready to justify those decisions to supervisors. Risk-based AML is essentially about matching effort to risk. Low-risk customers might be government bodies or straightforward salaried individuals. For them, institutions can rely on simplified due diligence and mostly automated monitoring. Medium-risk customers receive standard CDD and regular, more focused reviews. High-risk customers, such as complex structures or higher-risk sectors, require enhanced due diligence, detailed source of funds checks, senior approval, and close manual monitoring. The overall principle is simple. More risk means more mitigation. Lower risk still needs controls, but they stay proportionate. An enterprise-wide risk assessment brings together three connected actions. First, identify where your ML and TF risks naturally sit. Which products, services, customer types, channels, and geographies expose you most? Second, assess how strong your existing controls are against those risks. Are KYC, screening, monitoring, and training actually effective in practice? Third, use the results to drive strategy. Setting risk appetite, deciding which customers and products to focus on or avoid, and updating this view at least annually. AML risk breaks down into three steps. Start with inherent risk, the raw exposure before you apply any controls, such as a cash-intensive business in a high-risk country. Next come your controls, strong onboarding, sanctions and PEP screening, transaction monitoring, training, and audit. Their real-world effectiveness reduces that raw exposure. What remains is residual risk. If that residual risk still sits above the board's approved risk appetite, you have a remediation gap and must either strengthen controls or de-risk the relationship. Risk decisions also flow through the organization. At the top, the board defines how much risk the institution is willing to accept and approves the enterprise-wide risk assessment. That sets the boundaries for everyone else. Senior management then turns that intent into concrete resources and priorities. Which risks to tackle first, what tools to invest in, and where to place people. Operations makes it real in day-to-day work by adjusting CDD rules, monitoring thresholds, and onboarding standards so they align with those risk decisions. Let's move from the big picture enterprise view down to the individual customer. Customer-level risk assessment asks, given who this customer is and how they use our services, how much ML or TF risk do they pose? That judgment is converted into a documented risk score at onboarding and then kept up to date as their behavior, products, or circumstances change over time. A solid customer risk score blends expert judgment with hard data. On the qualitative side, analysts consider reputation and adverse media, transparency of ownership, how clear the business model is, and whether the structure looks unusually complex. Quantitative inputs come from numbers, transaction volumes and values, number of accounts, cash intensity, and cross-border flows. Whatever methodology you use, regulators expect it to be documented, consistently applied, regularly backtested, and simple enough to explain and defend in plain language. When you risk rate a customer, look across 4 dimensions. Profile risk is who the customer is, their role, industry, ownership structure, and how transparent their wealth and funds are. Geographic risk considers where they and their counterparties operate, and whether those places are linked to FATF concerns or sanctions. Product and channel risk looks at how they access you, face-to-face or remotely, simple deposits, or more complex, high-speed products. Behavioral risk captures what they actually do over time, volumes, patterns, and changes compared with what you originally expected. Risk rating then determines how much work you do over the customer's lifecycle. For low-risk customers, you collect basic information, review them less often, and rely more on automated monitoring. Medium-risk customers receive full standard CDD, normal document checks, periodic reviews, and some targeted follow-up when needed. High-risk customers require enhanced due diligence, detailed source of funds and wealth, more documentation, senior management sign-off, and much more frequent or event-driven reviews and monitoring. Customer risk is not a one-time label, it's something that keeps moving. You start with a baseline rating at onboarding. Then you continuously observe activity and compare it with what you expected for that customer's profile and business. When something stands out, unusual patterns, negative news, or simply a scheduled review date, that becomes a trigger. You investigate, decide whether the risk is actually higher or lower, and formally adjust the rating, which in turn changes how closely you monitor them going forward. Overall, your AML risk-based approach has two engines that must feed each other. At the enterprise level, you decide your overall risk appetite, where you're exposed, and how much budget and staff you dedicate to controls. At the customer level, you apply that strategy in practice through CDD, risk scoring, and alert handling on real relationships and transactions. An effective AML CFT defense links both. Investigations and case outcomes flow back into the enterprise assessment, so resources follow real, evolving risk.